So we've a pretty interesting guest today in Colm, Crowley. I suppose if you don't mind me jumping ahead there, lads. So I suppose one of the big things that I took from today's chat was just if you're a coach or you're a teacher, just somebody who's involved in coaching, I suppose athletes in general, at an underage level, that you're actually looking at the people you're actually coaching. You're looking at what it is that they're trying to improve on, what it is they're trying to get better at, what it is that they would enjoy doing, and not just following maybe your own kind of preconceived playbook of what you think they should be doing. So I think that was one of the big kind of nuggets for me today, is that you're actually paying attention. You know, if you're working with, you know, under sixes or whether it's or under 15s or whoever it is, you're looking at what they will enjoy doing and what they'll benefit from, more so than what you perceive to be, you know, what they should be doing.
It was certainly an indulgence on my part in that, like, my main interests, adolescence, coaching and hurling. So, like, it was everything I ever need in a podcast. Brought a little bit closer to home, for Shane today, and that we talked about Dublin, albeit the north side, but still.
We're getting closer. It's a step in the right direction. We're getting closer and closer to that golden southern hemisphere we call South Dublin. But yeah, it was a brilliant chat, and I loved just hearing the emphasis that he puts on communication, because, like, I know we say it all the time, but, like, you can have all the coaching skill and all the drills in the world, if you can't communicate or you can't talk to your players, it goes out the window. It's absolutely no use to it. So it was great to hear him put the emphasis on that where it should be.
Cool. Well, I suppose without further ado, we jump right in.
In we go. Episode, I think, 39, seeing as Shane wasn't able to count last week. Mr. Colm Crowley.
Who knows?
So Colm, currently working with Cork, but you would have started previously as a GPO role up in Dublin. Some people would say you are single-handedly responsible for Dublin's current dominance in Gaelic football. That's why you largely set up the coaching the game to try in a roundabout way make up for that complete dominance, as I said, by Dublin, and hopefully bring back up not just Cork but also the standard in every other county, but you've moved it across to hurling, so people will take the emphasis off of you. What do you say to that accusation?
Do you know what? It's actually something that gets labelled at me a good bit, is that I trained more players that won an All-Ireland football title than I have any hurling title of any level at any level at all in the country, because I was fortunate enough in 2011 and 2012 as well, actually. In 2013 I was coaching Dublin minor hurlers, and we had Ciarán Kilkenny, Emmett O'Cneela, Cormac Costello, Eric Lowndes, Conor McHugh. I'm probably forgetting one or two of them now, but there was a clatter of them went on from playing hurling. Well, they played football as well, obviously, but they went on to be fairly successful footballers. So, as I said, yeah, I did my bit for them. I think.
Yeah, I've heard of one or two of those, all right. So was that while you were a GPO up in Dublin, is?
Yeah. So I would have been GPO in Dublin from October 2007 till December in 2013. And I came back to Cork not long after. Cork got beaten in the All-Ireland final by Clare. But I suppose, you know, it was a case of really enjoying what I was doing in Dublin, but I suppose it was just the year we had with Cork getting up to Dublin so often, and a bunch of friends from home and spending a lot of time with them. I just kind of got the itch to get back and spend a bit more time closer to home. So I ended up back in the Rebel County.
And were you at the same club the whole time in Dublin, or were you around a couple of different clubs?
I would have had two different clubs. I would have worked with St. Maurice out in Rush, so I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or if you ever heard of it. Ciarán Archer would be the star man, let's say the Dublin under 20 footballers the last 2 years. They'd be a traditional football club, country football club, I suppose. They would have, in the past, I suppose, would have prided themselves on being hardy country folk. And when the lads from the city came out, they'd get a bit of a kicking and thumping. But in fairness, they're a very, very progressive club. You know, they've camogie ladies football. They would have got to, I think, an All-Ireland. They would have won an All-Ireland junior ladies football. They'd have a couple of girls playing underage camogie for Dublin and stuff now. And their hurling would be fairly progressive as well. Like Owen Conroy would have played with the Dublin senior hurlers probably, I think it was 3 years ago. He would have played 2 and 3 years ago. And again, unheard of for a football, traditional small football club like. And from there I went on to Nafina. So I spent 2.5 years in Nafina. Big operation, serious club, but serious people there. I think that's what they have. as well as having a huge kind of captive areas, they've got great people involved in the club that just keep that ship rolling, you know. And it does take an awful lot. Like I suppose they have as many members as a few small counties, you know. But to keep that show on the road it's a fair operation.
They're both north side. They are. Shane is thinking he has to apply for a passport to go across to one of those clubs.
It was steer clear. It's weeks preparation before we went up that in. I'm cool on myself, so we're as south side as they come, so didn't look forward to those trips across the Liffey.
Like everybody in Dublin would be on about like going out to St. Maurice and stuff like that, has been miles away. And I'm from Cork, like, and I'm from Killa, and Jesus, anywhere in Dublin is grand. But people used to have they won't come out there, they'll give walkovers to the underage, you know, of going all the way out to St. Maurice. Jesus, it's like going, as I said, it's like me going to the shop on a normal day back in the day, like, but it's, I said it was nice and compact Dublin. I really like that about Dublin, is that everywhere is within kind of close proximity. But I don't think the Dubs appreciated it as enough.
Yeah, it's quite close, but I think traffic does become that bit more of an issue. Nafina there, like, they're really progressive, like, you know, linking in with St. Pat's part of DCU now in terms of using the facilities. But I know, even just from chatting to Stephen Bean, who we had on before, oftentimes their biggest challenge is not so much pulling in players, but actually managing where to find space for the players to train. That, like, the amount of players you have on kind of one main pitch, that you're working with such small areas the whole time. He said he even found it, like, at the start of the year, it takes about 4 games to get the, you know, 14s or 15s or 16s used to just playing on a full pitch, because they never actually managed to get access to it of a normal training night, which is like, I know my own club, we're like trying to get 15 players to put on the pitch, which is such a completely opposite, like, situation than they have.
Yeah, that was their major problem that they have, like, is pitch space. You know, they've got the main pitch in Mulvey Road. They've got 2 AstroTurfs there on site. They use the school pitch next door, which is essentially their second pitch. And in fairness, they've got a couple of parks around. But I remember, was it when they were on about the Metro, that they were going to take away, to close the pitch there for a couple of months or a couple of years? Like, it would have torn the heart out of the club, you know. And in fairness to Nafina, they're as close, I think, to a country club ethos within, you know, as I've seen in let's say a large urban club, in that they're very, very socially adaptable, you know. They've got, like, they cover everything. There's handball, there's rounders, there's ladies football, there's camogie. They have a social, they've got crowd playing cards, bingo, whatever. There's something nearly every night, and it really is the social hub of the community. Like, and if that was going to be taken off them, and I think they were definitely losing another pitch as well up in Albert College at that time as well, you know. And I think they actually, I'm saying that now, I'm following the Metro line up, and they had pitches out in Collistown, or Collinstown out by the airport, and they were going to lose them as well. So kind of three of their pitches they use were going to be taken off them in one full swoop. So in fairness, like, look, they've got a huge area in a way. They're kind of the closest club to the inner city. I don't know if there are 9 or 10 schools that we used to go into in primary school, but a few of them now were like three or four teacher schools. They were small, but you know, it is their problem. Their problem is space, like, and managing the teams. I used to say that each age group at underage, from under, let's say, 13 down, was like a mini club. You needed a chairman, you needed a secretary, you needed somebody to look after it. And you know as well, Shane, in Coola, like, it's the same. And Ballyboden, Crokes, Vincent's, Bridget's, you know, they're just gigantic, like. And if any team won any title in Dublin underage, bar outside of the 5 of them, it was an unbelievable achievement. And I'm not saying winning is important at underage, but, like, you got 5 or 6 clubs there that, even competing with them, they should just nearly be put away, you know. You play each other there for 10 years, lads, and we leave everyone else with a chance of being as good as they can, because it's tough.
It's madness. Even, like, I presume it's the exact same with Nafina, but from Coola's point of view, like, any school in the area that has an AstroTurf pitch, any football club, any rugby club, like, for the 5 weeknights, if you go down there's a Coola team training on a quarter of a pitch or a half of a pitch. Like, they're training in everyone else's facilities, just because, like, numbers wise they have so much more than anything else in the area. And, like, I presume it's the same at Bowden, it's the same at Crokes, it's going to be the same in Nafina. And, like, with Dublin's success, the popularity is only growing and the game's growing, and there's just, it sounds like kind of first world problems coming from Dublin have won so much, but, like, you don't have anywhere to put all these teams. They're just playing it's madness. It's a ridiculous problem to have, but it is a very real problem for Dublin clubs.
Yeah, and like we wouldn't like in Cork. In Cork, then let's say it'd be the opposite in a way that like the clubs in Cork are really, really well facilities. You know, like I'm just thinking, I live in the Greater Douglas area, let's say, but they've got 2 full pitches and they've got a huge training area now that's been developed in the last few years. You got Nemo Rangers down the road with like I'm sure everyone is aware of their facilities. The Bars have 3 pitches and an AstroTurf. Bishopstown are after putting in a full size AstroTurf as well as 2 other pitches. And that's just the city, you know, there's a bit of space there, and I suppose they would have got the land back in the day, but like Ballyboden, sure when was Ballyboden invented? Was it the late 60s or something? And you know, like land it's an expensive commodity in Dublin, like.
And is that impacted as well by so many country people moving to Dublin? Does that kind of drive the popularity of it a bit? Like so many, you know, maybe younger teachers or young people in business to have, you know, the better, I suppose, economic opportunities. You move to Dublin, but you bring your from home interest in GAA to Dublin, get involved locally. That drives interest, you know, of people who traditionally from the country want to keep that link. Their children go and play GAA, you get more involved in GAA, and kind of, you know, in an almost vicious circle, it's going to drive that even more. But like, could you see that happening a bit now in Cork in the next while? That maybe some of them become huge clubs, or Nemo even on the way there.
Yeah, it is happening. You're saying that now when I'm going, like, one of the things we'd say in like all the urban clubs, let's say, and I bring in the Ballincolligs, Carrigalines, even Middleton into this as well, Glanmire, SARS, is they've what they have is exactly what you said. They've got a lot of young people migrating into the area, starting their families, but these people, because of the jobs they're in, they're going for the high paid jobs are in the cities, you know, and you got people with really good skill sets who would be able to benefit any club or any society, that they're going in and they're getting a part of the GAA club. And what we'd see an awful lot, and I suppose it's one of the small problems in the GAA, would be that you've got really, really good people getting involved in underage clubs, and they don't, I suppose there's a bit of a glass ceiling in a lot of clubs, you know, there's the kind of, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but there's a lot of traditional values still in the adult section of clubs, and where you'd have good people who might, you know, they'll cause a bit of bother and they might stir up a few things, but they don't get the opportunities a lot of the time to move into the adult sections of clubs. And like, it's one of the things that somebody I know that always says it's just always going to be good clubs, it's always going to be average clubs, and it's always going to be shit clubs. And that's just the way life is going to be, because we all can't be brilliant. There always has to be a top, middle and a bottom. But a lot of the time the clubs that'll stay down the bottom, they never really make a chance to move out of there. And a lot of the time is because, well, look, the urban clubs obviously don't have that issue, because numbers just, they gradually just get them up the ladder. But it's a small bit of progressive thinking that a person will bring to a traditional GAA club that mightn't be valued. And what you see with the likes of the Douglases, Bishopstown, Bars, they're inviting these people in open hands. They come on, keep coming, whatever, and we'll work you up the ladder. And you mentioned about Nemo, like Douglas would have had 90 players at a blitz 2 years ago at under 7. And like, I'm living in Douglas, my kids are going to grow up here, like, and I'm kind of going, Jesus, one of 90, like, is that a club that can really look after that player and that person and give them something that they'll enjoy and they'll remember fondly, you know, not just about winning Féiles and winning Premier 1 under 14s, but are they going to be still involved in it in 30, 40 years like I am? Will they still have that positive feel, I suppose, that they might get? And I suppose it is one of the problems with the big clubs, is that the rate of attrition is phenomenal. Like, it really is. Like, I know I did a workshop with a club lately, and they won a minor county, and there was 30 players on the panel, and there's only 5 of them still playing football 5 years later. And like, that's not one of these big clubs. This is just a normal sort of town team, and you're kind of going, like, that's not good enough, like. And a lot of it comes from, as I said, the people in the club at the top side. Their only worry is on the field. Are we winning things? Can we pay our book? Can we keep the books balanced? And can we win stuff on the field? Whereas underage is a lot more like, are we helping the person? Are we developing kids? Are we making them better people? And, you know, like, I think a lot of the coaching terminology and stuff out there nowadays is about that. And the people that are more likely to tune into this this podcast, or if you were doing a webinar or anything, they're probably younger coaches, or novice coaches I call them. People are trying to learn. They're learning, and they're going, well, look, John said this and Colm said the same thing, so like they must be onto something. Whereas the people a lot of time in the traditional people, and I say that and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're not coming onto they're not listening to the new way, and they're not listening to what Eddie Jones is saying, or what Stuart Lancaster is saying, or what Roy Keane or whoever. They're not listening to what people are saying about values and putting in culture. And I know that's a buzzword and it doesn't mean a lot for people, but I think we need to get people around to kind of constantly challenging themselves. And I know coach education probably falls down a small bit in the GA at that level, I think.
Coach education, I've noticed, and we chat a bit to Colm Nally about it as well. Like, I tutor, as do you, as does Colm and everything. And in a way, when it came in that everyone has to be up to a certain, badge, as they say in FI, but Foundation Award 1, Award 2, to coach at such an age group, you do have to strike the balance between education and certification, and also say, well, these are the stuff to abide by Coaching Ireland that we have to do, and then be very careful of how you layer in more of the values, the development of the person, because when you have people who are there because they have to be, it's very hard to get them on your side to go into more detail on that stuff. Whereas it's, have you got an old PDF of drills there? And you're like, you have to give them that, even though like you're thinking, this is not the ideal way to develop hurlers, but I need to get you on side. And you're trying to give them stuff to you, like, that's not ideal, but I need to get you on side so I can start giving you more of this other stuff here. That's how you're trying to often strike the balance there as well. Whereas if people were choosing to go to the coaching courses of their own choice, say, I would really benefit from this, you can give them whatever and they'll soak it up. So I think that's why it's a little bit harder to try manage that. But I do still think, GA coach education at times can be doing a better job though.
Yeah, like I do think it's a serious gap in the market, and when I say that is you've got people out there, like as I said, you've got coaching the game, you got people eating up that stuff, and the GA, what I'd say to that, and what somebody said to me about 6 months ago, and it wasn't in relation to that, but it was in relation to somebody else doing something, and what the person said to me was like, the GA are not serving its purpose, or the GA coach education are not serving its purpose if that fella's able to make money doing that. No, look, there's going to be professionals in every walk of life. There's going to be professionals in everything, because look, people want to be better and stuff like that, but there's an awful lot of stuff out there, and you're kind of going, well, if he's doing a webinar on that, why aren't the GA doing a webinar on that? Why aren't the GA doing an offering of part of their Award 1 course? And it is what you said, like people do the Award 1 because they have to, and people do the foundation because they have to. And Jesus, wouldn't it be great if we got people actually wanted to come into the foundation and go, look, you don't get anything, but we'd like to think you might learn a bit. And they might just be that bit more interested. You said, like, it's exactly what you said. But a lot of the time, and I know, look, the GA, they're going to be changing their model, or just talk of changing the model in line with the nuclear pathway. But it's difficult to see how we can change that mindset, because, like, I know Cork is a classic example that, like, I tweeted there about an article, I don't know if you've seen it, it was 1967 or something, 68, and it was the first GA workshop in Gormanstown College. It was a week-long residential. Now, I think it only ran for a year or two because it cost so much money and they couldn't keep it going. But there was nobody from Cork went to it. They were the only county not represented. And I'm just going, do you know what, that ticks the box. Like, that just, I know down here, like, that they like, we might have to do a crash course for inter-county manager because they have to be in Award 2. And geez, we got to do a foundation, Award 1, Award 2. No, I'm not saying it happens regularly, but I'm saying that there's this kind of thing that, and I'm not just saying it's Cork either, I'd imagine it's everywhere, that, sure, I played all my life, sure, what's Colm Crowley going to teach me about football? Well, sure, I'm not going to teach you anything about football, but I'm going to teach you how to coach. And there's a distinction there that people don't kind of grasp, I feel, that if you see a course in coaching courses, like, this person, and I'd hear it thrown back to us a lot, sure, Jesus Christ, that fella's doing the workshop. Sure, what do you know about it? Like, and I'm going, but he doesn't have to know anything about it. I should be able to go in, or we should all, like, if we're interested, if we're coach developers, as you said, John, like, we should be able to go in and do a coach development in ice hockey using the similar principles. We shouldn't have to know exactly the game, but we should know how to coach and what a coach needs to do. And I feel it's an undervalued skill, is the, like, you mentioned about, like, we can give a fella drills, and what you said is we have to give him the drills, because look, if you give him all the drills or give him 10 exercises, that'll make them 60% competent. That'll make the kids somewhat happy that they might come back next week as opposed to what they were doing the week before. But we can't, a book isn't going to get them the other 40%, like. As I said, it's one of the challenges, but it's also the challenge in how we present coach education, like what actually is it. And I think the GA, it'll take a generation to change the mentality of what coach education is for people, because I think there's just, as I said, people will judge it on more who's talking and what it's about, as opposed to how can I be a better coach. Like every workshop, no matter how bad the tutor is, you should pick up one thing, and a lot of the time that thing might be from the person sitting beside you, but people have to value that there's opportunities to learn and to be better, and if they can take that on board, like it'll be like my job. What I feel is my job as a GDA is, can I ensure kids are getting a better experience in the GA? And that should be a coach's job, as the coach's thinking as well. Can I make this a better experience than what they're getting already, or what they had before, or whatever? And I think, look, it's easy for me to say it because I'm not coaching many teams, but like if coaches kind of change their mentality as opposed to trying to win to how can I give these kids a better experience, it'd be interesting to see how they might change themselves. Like, and I don't know what you think yourselves about it, but like I do think it's definitely something that the GA kind of have to grasp. Like,
I think we need to bear in mind here as well. I think GA coach education is very much in the middle of a state of flux. The first group of lads who got together after Garmentstown and everything, even after it moved on from the old Thomond College, and looked to put a structure on it, I think that was a really important thing to do. I think they did some really good stuff early on. And what's highlighting some of it now is the fact that, like yourself, and we'll talk about coaching the game in a minute, and a few others have brought out various resources at the same time as other sports and other NGBs are really driving coach ed. Hockey tends to do a good job, rugby tends to do a good job. Soccer, not always consistent across countries, but I know from reading Mensch how they run their pro license in Germany. Like it highlights how good, how professional and how well it can be done. And I do think GA is on the way there, but I think it's going to be slow, and oftentimes more so on the receiving end of people who are going towards coach education and putting stuff out there in a way that they will actually take it on board, as opposed to from the designing the content end. You know, that brings us on to your own Twitter. It started as a Twitter page. I assume it's grown across Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms now, but Coaching the Game, do you want to give us just how it started, where it's grown to so far?
How it started, like, I suppose, do you know what, I'm very fortunate that in my job, and I've got to meet an awful lot of people. You know, I've built a lot of connections. Like, you know, as I said, even yourself, John, I know we would have been over and back on a few things a couple of years ago and stuff like that. But like, I don't know exactly why it started. I know that myself and a couple of people anyway, in one of the WhatsApp groups, let's say I'd consider some of the best coaching minds that I've ever met on a personal basis, right? So no offense, no lads, you're not in it, right? So, but I'd be very comfortable in, I suppose, talking to them and going through ideas and stuff like that. No, we don't do a huge amount of it. We talk shite most of the time, but you know, the odd time we would get into a deep coaching conversation. But we would have actually started something previous, I suppose. You know, just putting up a few quotes and a few things. It just kind of died a small bit of a ditch, you know. Just a lot of Twitter pages, like a lot of podcasts, a lot of things like that. To just kind of get a bit of enthusiasm at start and enthusiasm ways out. But I don't know. I actually don't know why I started it. But I just started putting up a small bit of content, and I suppose going back to the same thing I said to you a while ago, I'd like to think if I can help a coach get to 60% from whatever he's at already by just giving him content, kids will have a better experience. And like, I suppose it's about 5 years now. But I think it would have been a fairly novel idea at the time to be sharing kind of content like that. The GA, as you're aware, I'd like to think, well, maybe you're not aware, maybe it's just Cork. It's very closed door. We're not great to share. We're afraid of what the lads down the road might know about us, and we're not willing to share ideas. Yet if you go to any other sport in the world, so I think it's Aussie rules, and one of the lads was telling me about this, that at the end of the year, whoever wins the grand final or whatever it's called, there's a 3-day seminar or whatever it's called again for the head coaches and the analysts and whatnot. They all get together, and the head coach of the winning team has to give a presentation on what they did. And everybody else is there going, oh yeah, that explains that now, But the challenge for him then is, how do I adapt and be better next year? Like, we have to share the information. Now, I'd imagine the analysis and stuff like that. And I think it's getting the same in the GAA now with intercounty senior football level. I know there's an analyst group they share all each other's matches. And like, it's like if you're involved with Tipperary and you're getting every single match the Cork play, like, you should be fairly up to tune with what they're actually doing. And the challenge then for Cork is how to keep adapting. But the challenge for Tipperary is how do we actually counter that and be better. And I think the GAA, we've always been afraid of what the people down the road are good doing. And I think it's the same now in lockdown. People are going, Jesus, I heard the lads are training down the beach at 7 o'clock in the morning or up the woods. And we're all afraid of it, but we're never willing to actually share, because I don't know what it is. Because, like, I don't think I've got the solution. Christ, if I was the best coach in the world, I'd like to think I'd still be sharing, but I don't know. If I was the best coach in the world, I'd be after winning every title I've ever been involved with. But I haven't. I've lost fucking way more games than I've ever won. I've lost, I'd say, out of any finals I've been involved with, I've probably lost 95%, But I think just putting stuff out there and sharing ideas, and it was something Paul O'Brien said to me, and Paul's on the Roy Orbison tattoo of me, and Paul is, I suppose, like, he's like, people probably don't know him, like, but he's the coordinator inside in DCU. But he said to me one time, he goes, exactly what I said about the Aussies thing is that put out your ideas, share them, and then be better. How are you going to be better? So say what you're doing in the pre-season training, say what you're doing in your week leading into thing, and then adapt and be better. And I suppose it was a small bit of a mindset change when he said that to me. And Paul would be fairly progressive minded in his coaching, like, as regards stuff like that. But, like, as I said, it just, look, it started with just drills, or not drills, it was games and activities. And I suppose the title as well, coaching the game, I wanted to get the game into it, that it's not drills. And I do feel that there was an awful fallback to what was done with when I played myself. And a lot of coaches, and it's probably because of the coach education as well. And we're not getting that fella. Like, how do we, I always use the example of the fellow who played 20 years at his club, has to coach the under 18 because he played and nobody else will do it in a small club. He doesn't really want to be there. How do I actually engage with this person and he doesn't want to do coach education. He doesn't want to go out on a Friday night and a Saturday listening to me, like. How do we actually engage him, like? And the coach education that I'm offering and the coach education that Jay are offering isn't catering for that fella.
I think often with that kind of particular fellow, when you're looking at him, sometimes kind of when you think maybe I can't get through them, you're almost playing a damage limitation game. So the young coaches won't kind of veer towards, like, they're obviously eager to learn, but you want to make sure they're coming away from the seminar with the coaching modules and the coaching information that you've given them, and not coming out being like, oh, Johnny played for 20 years and he told me about this drill, I'll go do that straight away. Do you find that when you're working with them?
Not really. Like, in fairness, like, I will say I love novice coaches, because they're like, what I say is they're the same as the kids in the nursery. They are just so open to anything. And like that now, they will say, like, Jesus, if Joe Dean is on the workshop and Joe says he does it this way, and I'm trying to tell them all they should do it this way, they'll all do it the way Joe does it, like. And that's natural as well, But I think, like, as I said, I think there's so many, because the GA as well, you see, we're all, well, I'm a professional coach, but 99% of the coaches involved in clubs are, and they're amateurs. And they're people that have got, and when I say amateurs now, I'm talking proper amateur, not like amateur GA players. But like, what I suppose what we're trying to do a lot of the time is we're trying to put out generic content to suit as many as possible. But that might only suit 60% of the people. And what I'd feel, Shane, like, I think one of the biggest problems is that there's not enough real specific content going out. Like, how do we get that coach? What can we do for that coach that I mentioned a while ago? Like, I don't know if there's something. As I said, it's not as much of a difficulty in other sports, because they're not, like, there's not 2,200 hockey clubs in Ireland with 100, or let's say average 20 coaches per club, like. So it's easier to kind of finite the content to people. But I think one of the problems we have is just that we're not specific. So I don't know what you think about it, but I do think it's one of the things, and I'd say that it might be generic in a lot of sports, would we be better off doing a workshop in my county for 15 people that is going to be really, really specific to, as opposed to doing a generic one that, sure, 300 people come on the workshop. Sure, aren't we great? Look, 300 people on the workshop last night. But sure, what were we really doing in it, Like, I just think that, I don't know, have you seen other things in other sports that have done that at a better level, like?
In other sports, they tend to be like they go very, very specific. So you have position specific coaches, or like kicking coaches, or like goalkeeping coaches. Obviously, everyone has them, but kind of like really niche into specifics. But I think you are right when you're covering like such a broad spectrum, like that the skill set for GAA is. It kind of is. So I suppose drawing that line, like obviously, if you're narrowing it down to 15 people, it's a lot more workshops and a lot more manpower and a lot more time that you're going to have to give to educate as many coaches. So I suppose I don't really have the answer, but it's definitely just a toss up between what direction you want to go.
I think both are very relevant, but it's how we use them to complement each other. Like, in a way, you need a certain amount of minimum standards. You need kind of, like, it's very different in GA in that it's not as if we're all building towards an Ireland team that's eventually going to go somewhere. Like, Carlow is never going to team up with Wexford to go in the same direction, whereas you would hope in the long term the FAI are trying to bring everyone along together so that Ireland plays better. The RFU are trying to bring everyone along together so that Ireland rugby team does better. Same in hockey, same in athletics even. Whereas GA, it's not the case. Like the ceiling of competition is that bit lower, so there's always more of a reason to not share. No, I still don't think it's right. I'm still all for sharing. And like Damien down there and Kerry will tell us that once a month, him from Legion and the lads from Dr. Crokes meet up and share absolutely everything. Here's our warm up, here's our GPS data, here's all the games we play. Everything is open.
Here's the dig.
So I do think that's always going to be something that's, you know, kind of grabbing your jersey and pulling you back a little bit. That there isn't the full bigger picture there at the very end to try push things on a bit. But thankfully you do see stuff then, like in the performance analysis, there's a shared Google Drive of all the games. Performance analysis are really good to interact with each other a good bit as well, whereas in some other roles,
but what is that there. Because they're not, a lot of them fellas aren't traditional GA, and again, look, I'm using the word traditional, and I don't mean to use it bad, because like Jesus, I consider myself a traditional GA person, but is it because a lot of those people, I don't know whether it's true skill set or through their background, they're not that way kind of inclined of the, Jesus, don't share it with him, because I think it's amazing what they're doing. Like when I heard about that, I was going, what? In the GA? How? Nah, couldn't be. And he was going, oh yeah, there's 22 teams involved at the moment, you know, we're trying to get the rest. And I was going, who are the rest? Like, is it just Dublin not sharing anything with everybody else? But I just thought that was so novel and so unique in the GA that there was a willingness for performance analysis. And I don't know, is it just a case of that they're always trying to, because as I said, maybe it's just there's such a sort of small number of them that it's really focused on them improving themselves. Like, is that the content that they're sharing? Like, oh, what did you do with this, or what are you looking at? I've heard the cases of one fella, how true it is, but working with a leading inter-county team who was sacked because he put something up on YouTube. You know, on another team, he did a bit of analysis on another team, put it up on YouTube, and the inter-county manager said, "Nah, good luck." Like, and again, we're talking about the traditional inter-county manager versus this different mindseted person in performance analysis. Like,
I'm surprised the manager hasn't put a stop to that sharing the videos, or at least tried to, you know, that, oh, there's 22, and then you're like, oh yeah, there's only 20 now.
Yeah, I'd say there'll be some fellas say it, but maybe some of them don't even know. Like, well, they obviously do know, but yeah, they know everything going on. But I just think it's unique the way that there's that kind of, as I said, is it because of their background? Is it because they're not, you know, like a lot of the performance analysis aren't working for their actual home county as well, which maybe makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, it's definitely just like linked as well to the development of the GA from a science perspective too. Like you have your performance analysis coming into the field now and getting very big there. You've nutritionists, you've S&C coaches, and for all of those areas, you do have to, you know, connect with other coaches. You do have to, you know, discuss different methodologies and that I suppose maybe the growth of the courses that have been on offer over the past 20 years has definitely probably helped with developing that. But you're right. These people are, like, say, performance analysis there for that example, are very much kind of going against the grain of what is culturally bred into you in the GA, and that's a very hard thing to go against, because like Murph just mentioned there, like if you take me here at Killarney Legion, say Dr. Crokes, we all went to school together. We were all in class together. We were all getting detention together, playing on the school team together, going for lunch together. Even as seniors, you still wouldn't share. You still wouldn't share a single thing that was going on in your club. Like there was a wall there, and that's not just unique to us by any means, but it's the GAA is a very unique kind of organisation, I guess. We'd be here for a while trying to delve into it.
Yeah, and you're naming a bunch of things there, like nutritionists and stuff like that. And I'm, like, what came to my head when you named them all there is like they're all coming from an academic background at the moment, like, and even performance analysis is an academic background at the moment with the course in Carlow and stuff. And maybe it's just because of that, because they have to share in that, they have to do a thesis and they have to share their content, that they just kind of have this more, I don't know, is it like, as I said, like they don't have they're not going to solve all world's problems, and maybe they acknowledge that because of maybe it's just a challenge of them actually being in that setting of research, that their tutor or whoever is their coordinator or whatever the title is kind of going, oh yeah, but like, how are we going to do that? And their willingness to share and be open, like, is that it?
And your work gets reviewed by your peers, and you get feedback on it. You develop, they develop, and that it definitely, I would imagine it's linked into that this kind of move. But like you said, it's definitely a generational shift is going to be needed, I think, for things to move more like the AFL, where that content is just shared openly kind of across the board of, well, this is how we've done it.
I don't know if we ever get that far to it. Like AFL, they anonymise their GPS and share the full season's findings with all the rest of the league. I can never see it getting to that stage, as much as you would like and as beneficial as it would be for research, for coaching, for everything, and even just the openness there. I just can't see us getting there, to be honest. There's too much of that. Oh, we can't be telling them. When I did my level 1, was it 6 or 7 years ago, and like we were asked, we're doing with the stuff on stats, the twins from Monaghan, it was a really good session. But like the club beside us were there, like, do you keep stats? Oh, we do, yeah. What do you keep? Oh, the score. I just would give nothing away, absolutely nothing. On like a level 1 course, what are you going to say? Give like 3 or 4 stats you keep? No, give nothing. Full deck of cards completely in against their chest.
Sure they weren't curry fellas, John. You struggled with him. But look, do you know what I said? I'm just thinking there as well, like, is you go back and you look at films like Remember the Titans, and there's a scene in that where your man refuses to share the videos, and you're going, like, this is the 60s or 70s in America, high school football, and they share each other's videos. And I just think, look, as I said, I don't know, is it an Irish thing that we'll have to get out of, that we're a small bit begrudging of others and stuff like that, but it's it's interesting, like as I said, I'm just thinking, there was one fella, let's say there's another prominent Facebook page, let's say in Cork, and there was he went on a big rant 2 weeks ago giving out about Rebel Og, that were sharing content and what we're doing with development squads and stuff. But you're like, what we do with an under 14 or 15 development squad is not going to make us win in All-Ireland, be the difference us winning in All-Ireland 10 years time, like. And why we share it, why we're conscious of trying to share stuff, is because, yeah, we might have 200 fellas in our under 15 development squad, but there's another 800 kids, the same age group, who are out there with the club. And if you're coaching one of those club teams and you go, Jesus, you know what, Aidan O'Connell's giving us that, or putting that out there, we might do that strength and conditioning in the winter with our lads, with the rest of them, we're kind of going, well, here, this is a win-win, like. No, we're not just improving the minority, the 20%, we're actually improving everybody. And look, the chances of somebody coming from everybody up to be a Cork star is slim, like, it's very, very slim. But, Jesus, if we can improve the club game overall, like, it can't help but not make everything better eventually,
Yeah, we did a few open training sessions back. My first round through the development squad, the lads, that would have led it to GDAs in Carlow, invited in coaches from all the clubs. This is what we're doing with under 15 level development squad. The lads who haven't made it, you can just copy this training session and bring it back. I'm actually shocked the lads from Kilkenny didn't come across and look at what we're doing in the Carlow development squads. Yeah, to bring us back then to coaching the game, how we got started on this, I wasn't expecting to go on that little discussion there, around like sharing the various content and trying to upskill coaches as best we can and make it as easy as possible for them to develop coaching skills. But realistically, What are some of the key skills we're looking to coach? Like, if we say, like, okay, this was the old way of doing stuff, this is how we would like coaches to train teams, particularly underage, like kind of 16 down. What are some of the key things we'd like for them to develop? Or if we were to give them a number of basics after a foundation or an award one, what would they potentially be?
You're talking technical skills now, or what are we asking the coach as regards?
Oh, the coach. Yeah. What would we like the coach to be able to do?
See, this is something that's constantly changing, and I think this is one thing where I think the GAA we're a small bit slow, like in evolving coaching. Like the stuff I put up there 4 years ago is probably dated, you know, and that's 4 years. That's quick evolution, like, and I find that like what we want the coach to do now, like as I said, back then it was coaches come in, they want to know the drills. That's what they, as I said, they ask you for the drills. But I think a large amount of it now, I think the most important thing for coaches, I think, is communication. And every good person that we talk to, let's say, in the various podcasts and stuff, communication is nearly number one. That being able to actually talk to the players and be empathetic to them and the individual, and it just seems to be a constant know who you're dealing with, talk to them, be in touch with them. Like even one of the things that was said lately was like asking a player a week before a match, if I tell you next week that you're not starting, how are you going to react? You know, like, sure, Jesus, 9 times out of 10 fellas won't even tell the player. They just name the team and they just kind of, geez, I hope he doesn't come over and ask me about it, you know? And like, I think, again, going back on the amateur thing and the mass production is, we expect an awful lot of our coaches as well. We expect that our coaches have that skill set that they're actually able to communicate with a 15-year-old or a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old. Where a lot of people don't have the skill set naturally, and they haven't acquired it through their profession. Like, I'd find with secondary school teachers now, we're always very good with youth, because that's their job, is dealing with youth players, being able to talk to that age group. But I find that you'd have other people then that wouldn't have that skill set that they've acquired professionally and through their, let's say, in their job, that we expect them to be good communicating and stuff like that and being able to be empathetic with the player and stuff like that. But we're never really giving them the skills, and they haven't acquired the skills naturally. And I think I really do think that is one of the biggest challenges that we have as coach education in the GAA is that, like, we don't know what, like, John, I know you're involved in secondary school, but like Shane, if you're financial background and all you're thinking about day to day is making money and how do I get rich, like, and you're not talking to anybody, you're just sending emails, how are you supposed to be able to go out and talk to a 12-year-old and be able to empathize with them on what their situation is? And it can be very difficult for a lot of coaches to be able to bridge that gap. And I think our expectations a lot of the time as well, like as I said, I'm probably contradicting myself on what I said earlier, our expectation of what we expect of coaches is very high. But I think, go back to the first question, like, I think communication is the key. I think coaches who are actually able to talk to players and look at the bigger picture. There was one workshop I did a few weeks ago, and the coach had was involved on the 13s or 14s, and he said, no, he goes, we're prioritising winning the next 3 years. And I said, all right. I said, what are you doing that for? And he goes, because half of these kids won't be involved in the GAA club in 10 years' time. And he goes, so isn't it as well that they have a good experience while they're here? And I was kind of going, all right, yeah, do you know what? He has a small bit of a point, like. But I said, shouldn't your ambition to try to keep those 10 players involved in the GAA club in 10 years' time? And he just didn't agree in it, like. But he made a valid point. Like I said, if you know that the GAA club will not have half of these players in 10 years' time, wouldn't you try to make it as a good experience as you can now? No, there's obviously going to be a bit of, if you're focused on winning like that, there's obviously going to be a bit of spill off. But I said it was something that we don't, like, I never would have considered, like.
Because they can come back then, you know, say if they do give up, like, no matter what you do, they're going to give up. But they can come back in later life when they move to an area and want to make friends, and they have that slight bit of familiarity with the local GAA club, so might go down again to meet new people. They may have children in years to come and get involved as coaches, as if they're Shane there making his millions, potentially billions, knows how to work an old Excel spreadsheet, could get involved as a club treasurer, could get involved as, you know, if they're used to leading in business, could get involved as a club chairman and drive standards from that end as well, because they've had a positive experience as a player, they're far more likely to get back involved in again later. Just on that then, if there's some of the key skills we want in coaches, is that something we look to develop, or, like, Okay, obviously in an ideal world, we would recruit people with those skills, obviously not so hard. And that does bring us to the question of how do we actually recruit people to get involved? It's something like has been by a mile the biggest challenge as coaching officer for a few years was getting new people involved. And then once you do have them involved, how do you balance? Okay, now that you're involved, here's all the stuff you have to be good at, and like really frighten them away when you do get them in.
Yeah, like, even the tweet I put out there last week, there was somebody came back and said, but sure, like, they've got to do the safeguarding and they got to do guard of it and they got to do their foundation course. And I'm going, yeah, give me some solutions here, will you? But in fairness to GAA, have come with solutions and a lot of that stuff. But I think how do you recruit people is, as you said, I think one of the most important and the undervalued things in the clubs is actually having somebody, a recruitment officer. And I'm saying that now when people are going, for fuck's sake, another job for somebody. But what I mean is that identifying a specific role for a person. That 99% of people who ask to get involved in a GAA club are asked at underage level, under 10 down, by someone going, Jesus, over the fence, will you come in and give us a hand there with that group? And the person going, oh, no, Jesus, no. But that person, as I said, could be really good at some specific role, not coaching. Or it could be coaching, but they're afraid that, Jesus, if I go in there now, I'm going to have to carry the gear down on Saturday morning. I'm going to be down at 9:30 to set up the pitch for 10 o'clock. I won't get out there till 11:30. Sure, the wife will kill me at home with the other two kids. And, but if we said to that person, do you know what? Can you come onto the pitch at 10, leave at 11, everything else will be done. You just need to look after the group there. So I think if we can specify what we actually want people to do, as opposed to, will you give us a hand? Because give us a hand or sit or will you come on the committee is, people don't want to go near any of that stuff. But if I said to you, John, we're going to set up a coaching committee. Anybody, do you think Damien and Shane might be interested in getting involved with that? No, there's no fundraising, no fixtures or nothing. All we're going to do is we're going to just look at the coaching in the club and how we can improve it. Nothing else. Do you think the boys would be interested in that? And you're going to say, geez, well, look, they hate money, they hate meetings. This might be something we'll start out. But I think if we can be really specific, and I think the GAA we're brutal, and it goes back to the communication. How do we actually get someone? Imagine if we had one good recruitment officer in every club who's getting training from Crow Park and Munster and Leinster and all of these and getting a couple of workshops a year and being given skills to actually be able to go out and recruit people, because you see loads of workshops for recruiting volunteers, but sure, there's nothing really. Again, they're all too bland, they're too beige is a word that I heard lately. It kind of ticks an awful lot of boxes, but we just need to tick one real specific box. And I think everybody will do something. And I don't know what club it was before, but I know there's no paper membership forms anymore, but they actually had the membership form at the front, and on the back the parent had to tick one box, and did 35 different roles. Help with sandwiches, whatever, once a month. Can you do registration? Can you do the nursery coordination? Can you be a coach? Can you go on the finance committee? Can you go on the coaching committee? Blah, 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 blah. Tick a box. Every person just looked at that and you go, yeah, sure, look, I'm an accountant. I might be able to help them with finance committee. So that person then is going to work into a group where it's not just them, there's 3 or 4 of them, and it makes it easy. And I think we're just bad at just specifying what we want someone to do. And I don't know how you'd feel from your own experience in that, but I think committees, geez, I got co-opted onto the committee in the club this year because I was I went off Zoom half an hour early before the AGM finished, and somebody put my name down for it, and I'm going, committee. But sure, do you know what? It's actually grand now to actually be on, because I don't have to drive down there. I'm living in Cork. It'd be 35-minute drive down, every 4 or 5 weeks to be listening to finance and upgrading the pat around the pitch and this kind of stuff. But if there was only a coaching committee, which we had in the club for a long time, it's kind of died away the last 2 years with COVID and whatnot. But geez, I used to enjoy those meetings because we used to write good conversations at it. But I do think that we were a small bit focused on the top end when we should have actually been focused on the bottom end. How can we go back and help the 6, 7, the under 6 coaches, 7 coaches, and 8 coaches? And I think if you did that, I think if you only focused on 3, 4 years of coaching and helping them people to be better, you'd be a lot better. But when I say that, I'm not about the whole team. I'm not about the manager with that group, the person doing the registration, the person doing the texting, the person writing the report for the PRO. That it's not just the one person doing everything. It's not just me as the manager doing everything and carrying the bags and everything. That I've got, John, you're going to do this, Damien, you'll do that, Shane, you'll do this. But it's specific and it's not generic. And I think that's where clubs fall down. But I think that's where a lot of clubs you can you could get great change out of that. I think if they were really identified what the roles were and went after people fitting that kind of description.
I think that's a really good point around, like, there are so many beneficial jobs that people have the skill set for, but it's identifying them, and even sometimes the specific role they would fit into. Like, I know, absolutely top class coach educator, he's the lead of coach education in Leinster, Colm. He said when he was running the nursery in Portlaoise, his own club, that the fellow who was helping him out, like, Colm just made up a little poster, and your man looked at it and says, do you know, could you give me an evening, and I might do something with that. And he came back the next day, and Colm was looking, I was like, this is unbelievable. Yeah, my day job is a graphic designer. He was like, what? Like, this is perfect. So they now use him to make up any big recruitment drive they're doing or anything that's on. Well, your man just makes it up in like 5 minutes and it looks unreal. And that's like a really suitable role for his skill set. Whereas, like, so often we find someone who's a coach, oh, they're good at doing jobs, we'll get him to be chairman, we'll get him to be coaching officer, and they just you use them too much in the first year or two, and they're doing all these roles that they don't necessarily have the skill set for. I think that can annoy people. Like, for people who just want to get involved in coaching, then they're ringing around managers, trying to organise matches, trying to see, okay, where do I get the jerseys sorted? Whereas if you can, like, divvy up those jobs, and a good few people have something really small to do, it can be so much more manageable, and you have far more longevity in it. One thing I want to touch on there, and it's something you mentioned, and is a really important point, because clubs can be quite polarised on it. In some clubs, like, all players, yeah, they're involved in coaching, no question. Other clubs, that is such a no-no. They're concentrating on playing. You leave them alone. And somewhere in between. How can we make that as easy as possible for players to get involved without a huge onus on time? Because so many obviously do commit a lot of time to clubs. Because realistically, it is probably one of the keys to, like, drive role models for younger players, and to just have kind of that bridge between younger players, current players, and the future of the club. Like,
yeah, no, you've ticked a couple of boxes here about having the bridge and being role models and stuff like that. Like you know, you mentioned, when we talked about Killadang there, like, and Darragh Egan was on with us, and he said, like, during the winter, they asked every 4 players to go down one night, and that's all they had to do for the whole winter, go down one night, work at the station, stay there for the night, just fill out a little comment on each player as they came, job done. But what that does, like, as I said, it just does so many beneficial things. But I think the clubs that are saying, no, look, they're focusing on, they're doing enough already, they're trying to win the county, like, that's top end stuff. That's the adult section of the club dictating to what the juvenile section should be doing. I think what's important is that there's, I suppose, a responsibility of the players that are there currently to give something back other than playing. But we have to make it as easy as possible for them. That if we're Damien, I want you to come, Damien, Jesus, you're playing away, you're training 3 nights a week, you're going to the gym another night. How can I get Damien down to coach? Damien he was brilliant at the summer camp there 2 years ago with the lads. They loved him. How can we get him down to coach? Damien, what night are you training? Tuesday and Friday? Right, 7:30? If we train from 6:30 to 7:30, will you be able to give us the first 45 minutes? Not asking for another night, not asking to go on to matches on Saturday, not asking to do the jerseys. As I said, these things that scare people off when you get involved. Not asking to do anything except be on the pitch at 6:30, tip away at 7:15. We'll just play a match amongst themselves for the last 15 minutes. You go over and you do your warm-up with the seniors, whatever it is. And I think if we can define it and make it, again, going back specific on what the role is you want them to do, because the fair, like, we were very fortunate last year with the minor team in the club that we had 2 young fellas, 2 of our senior players went down and coached them, but they just trained every single night before the seniors, and the boys went over and they just basically hop over the fence at 7:30 and get straight involved with the training. And it wasn't an extra night for them. It was no extra thing, because look, they were probably going to be down at 7 o'clock anyway, so now they just got to be down a bit earlier. But the young fellas absolutely loved it. The minors, they loved it, and what they loved mostly, and I don't mean this in a bad way to any parents, is that it wasn't a parent involved coaching. It was actually somebody outside of that little circle of them and their parents and their family caring about them. And the young fellas, no, they didn't win the county or nothing like that, but there was some buzz around their trainings. Numbers were up. They were just, it was enjoyable now to watch it and see them kind of, the young fellas kind of just embrace the situation. But the two boys on the coaching team as well, they both play senior hurling. They're 2 of our better players. And one of them in particular, like, I think he learned an awful lot himself about the game. And what I mean by that is that, yeah, it's easy, we can blame the manager for things. But all of a sudden he was in the manager on the sideline and losing team, and and he said it to me. He goes, there was just nothing we could do. Anything we tried to do wouldn't change. And I said, I hear you, man. Now you understand how we feel a lot of the time. And I think for some players, what it will actually do, and I felt this myself when I started really coaching at a high level, is I had an understanding of the game myself a lot better than I had previously. So, no, I talk to other people and they say, look, they understood the game at 15. They knew exactly, as much as they know now as a player. But I really didn't until I was probably 25, 26. I was just going out playing and I enjoyed it. I just loved going out playing, and I didn't think too much about tactics or what I was doing off the ball or anything like that. I was just going out playing and trying to score and hurling and trying to defend the football. But a lot of players, what you see is their understanding of the game, because they have to look at it from a completely different perspective, is their understanding of their game and the responsibility of them on the pitch will actually really improve them and stand to their game. So, like, I don't know how you feel yourselves about that. Like, is it, maybe I was just a late developer, but I think I was 26. I can remember, I thinking back, I was going, fuck, like, I'm just thinking about the game completely different than I am before. So, like, I don't know, like I said, you'll tell me now that you were all 8, 9 and whatnot.
I was the exact same, completely. I actually changed position once I started coaching because I just thought about the game completely different, and it suited to play in a different place than I did where I was before that. Damien, what are you like in Legion in terms of like senior players? Because you'd have like some notable All-Ireland winners. Like, have you kind of a model for getting back involved? Is it up to each individual? Because I can imagine like a young lad at home in Killarney looking at Legion, because you'd have a good few televised games, sees Damien O'Sullivan, is like, oh, that's the lad that was down a trend a few weeks ago telling us to do trap bar deadlifts, forget about football.
More like start drinking water. But yeah, it's I wouldn't say that there's a set system at all. There's no set system there. But like, even if we take like during lockdown, like even like whether it's getting some senior players from both the senior ladies team and our own senior team as well, just to do maybe Zoom, HIT classes, and just like talking through the exercises, why this might be benefit, how to do it well, encouraging kids. It's gone down a massive treat, but I do know that like in normal times, I guess, when we're on the field, Saturday mornings getting down to the to the underage kind of camps and that would be on, it gets quite tough because of, like you mentioned, Colm, that like it's an extra day. You might have a game on the Saturday evening, you might have a game on the Sunday, and you've already trained on the field 3 nights during the week. You might be driving. Some people might be living above in Cork, driving out to Killarney or wherever. You're just, you're spent, and you're looking for that little bit of time back to yourself. But we've been lucky in a lot of ways that I think there's just a very good kind of club mentality. But I do feel that from, I suppose, speaking to people in different clubs around the country, that club ethos, that drive to give something to your club, isn't something that's there in a lot, I suppose, in a lot of senior players. It is kind of the fella who maybe is no longer playing, has a son or a daughter who's in playing. They're the ones who are going down, giving that time, and it's, it can be tough for some players to kind of pull themselves aside and go, look here, I'm giving all this time to the club as it is, maybe I should give an extra little bit to the underage. Whereas most lads, I think, just kind of look at their time across the week really and go, it's a lot to ask. So that's a fantastic idea that you had by just having some of the underage training the hour leading up to the senior training. That can be that's a great idea. But we've just been lucky, Murph, to put it to you honest, that lads just want to give back. They want to be down, they want to show face, and they want to kind of go down and pass on some of their skills, I guess. But we don't have a system, no. We don't have one. It's just we're lucky.
Just on a slightly different point, the players seeing it more as less of a club thing and more of a we're pushing to be elite. Have you noticed, has that been more of a recent thing in that, because from kind of 14 onwards, some players now are far more involved, they spend more time with development squads and county teams than they do with their club from a younger age? And is that possibly what's driving that? Because they actually don't have as much of a club influence as they do an inter-county influence, or maybe a school, an elite academy, or whatever it might be.
I don't actually have an answer, Murph. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, it just popped into my head there. It's something I was chatting to another teacher in school about there not so long ago. Or Colm, have you noticed that even?
Just little, as in the young fellas aren't involved with the clubs as much as it.
Yeah, because some now, because development squads have grown so much and there's that bit more of an emphasis on them, and particularly now I've noticed like minor teams have really pushed, and like in some counties they've nearly drawn players away from club for a more extended period of time than previously. And so are some players who spend maybe 2 years minor, 2 years county under 20 and then are straight into a senior panel, actually have less and less time with the club than they do with county.
Yeah, like look here, I'll hold my hand up here. When I was involved with Dublin Minors back in the day, Jesus, we used to go 3 times a week, and like lads would basically just play with their clubs, at the weekend. They did way more county stuff than club stuff. But I suppose, look, I've been fortunate that I've been on the inside with development squads and stuff like that, and like I'd have a small question mark about the need for a lot of them. Like I think look, when the under 17 came back there a couple of years ago, or went from under 18 to under 17, there was a lot of counties going, geez, we need to start development squads earlier. And I was kind of going, Jesus, no, we need to start them fucking later. We need to leave lads alone, because I think I'd say I could pick out a Tony Forrest and Sonny Walsh panel from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I'd say half of the players aren't playing first team with their club. And that's unbelievable to think of from my perspective, that a fella's good enough to wear a Cork jersey at 14 and he's not playing with his first club, team in the club, and probably a quarter of them aren't even playing anymore. And I do think that the development squad system, look, I'm not a huge fan of it myself. As I said, again, it's easy for me to say. I think there's a lot of stuff done for the sake of doing stuff because others are doing it. Oh, Kerry are doing this, Cork better start doing that. Like, I think it's every county is unique in its own way, and I'm just not a huge fan of development squad systems. I don't know what you think about them now, lads, but like, I suppose, look, it's easy for me on the inside, but like what you said, John, I'd prefer lads to be out at their clubs 100 times a year rather than being 60 times at their club and 40 times at the development squad, or whatever way it breaks down. Like, I know, in fairness to Brian Cuthbert, he brought out the stuff about trying to link in schools and stuff, but like, we shouldn't have, I suppose, look, I'll use a Cork perspective, we shouldn't have a young fella from Middleton playing Premier 1, going to school in Middleton CBS in a development squad until he's 17. He's getting the elite level coaching, training and stuff like that without the county interfering with him.
You've taken a different approach with underage, not so much development squads, but very much underage county teams over the last few years in terms of entering the traditional 24s and stuff like that. Do you want to give us a bit of detail on that?
Yeah, like, look, I was on the inside, I was very lucky. Like, we'd an absolute golden spell at underage level in Cork hurling the last probably the last 7 years since I came back from Dublin. Nothing to do with me, no, because all the work is done by the coaches and stuff. But I was kind of tasked with the Tony Forrestal group. Each GDA was given a kind of under 14 hurling, under 14 football, under 15 hurling, under 15 football. But I kind of always stayed with the Tony Forrestal, and I think we won 4 out of 6 or something like that, and we won 6 out of 6 Sonny Walshes, which is the B tournament. And I'll say it straight up, we won because of numbers. We didn't win because we had the best players and thing, because, as you can see, subsequently, a couple of years later, we're not winning All Irelands at minor level, or under 21 with those teams. But Cork were going down there. Like, I remember this year's minor team, actually, they went down to Tony Forrestal. The best players played no more than 25 minutes of any game, 40-minute games. So we went into a final after lads playing about 60 to 70 minutes hurling, our starting team, whereas the teams we were playing in the final, they had a couple of humdingers. They were after playing 100, 120 minutes. Our 24th man, because Cork and the size of it, our 24th man in hurling is going to be better than the 24th man in most other counties. So if it did come to an injury thing, we were getting the benefits of it. But look, I suppose, no, I love the days down there. Jesus, it was a great tournament, and it still is a great tournament, in whatever format it'll come back in. But we were seeing players coming through Tony Forrestal not baking another 15 development squad the following year and basically giving up. Stop playing with their club, not playing with the school. And in fairness, look, it was more Sean, the brother, would be very much kind of, yeah, we need to do this a bit better, you know. So what we decided to do was forget about Tony Forrestal, forget about trying to win it, because I suppose no matter what way you portray it, if you're under Tony Forrestal under 14 this year and you don't make the under 15 next year, you've been dropped. Whereas that's not what we were trying to do. But that's how you'll see it. And if Damien wasn't on the under 14 last year, came out to the under 15 this next year, Damien's on a bit of a higher level. So all of a sudden, Damien feels a lot better about himself. You feel a lot worse, and you're only going one way. So we decided not to enter it. What we said we'd do an internal thing. So we said we'd have 8 teams throughout the county, split geographically. Like in hurling, we've got 3 from East Cork, 3 teams from East Cork. In football, we've 1 team from East Cork and we've 4 from West Cork. In hurling, there's only 2 from West Cork. You know, so we just built it around the strong clubs, because traditionally we would have went east, west, south, or east, west, north, and city. And Jesus, sure, the east 40th man would be the starting player on every other team. But because of the traditional boundaries that we were dictated to, we weren't catering for that player. There was a fella substandard from one of the other regions making essentially a county development squad because of where he was from. So we changed it up. We said we'd do it internal. We'd start with 200 at under 14. At under 15 we'd go down to 100. At under 16 we'd go down to 50. At under 17 their county minors or their Celtic Challenge. And what we felt is that we're not dropping you, Shane. It's just the net is getting tighter. And you're not being dropped. It's just, look, we 200 last year. We've only got 100 this year. It's nothing against you. It's just that we want to kind of have a natural funnel from top to bottom, as opposed to being picking fellas, dropping them. And the same fellas every year. I felt awful. Fellas are coming in at under 14, 15, 16, 17 for trials, and they'd never make a Cork squad. And that must be disheartening for young fellas. So we just said we'd get rid of that system. We went, as I said, the plan was 200 at 14, 100 players at 15 in each court, down to 50 or 60 at 16, and at 17 then there'd be minors or not. And I suppose our thinking was like, if we can keep more players in the system a bit longer, because like as I said, if you think you're good enough for Cork and you don't make it, it's hard to pick a lot of fellas up. And it was the rate of attrition, as I said, it's a scandal, the amount of players that would have worn a Cork jersey at underage level and not playing with their clubs 5 years later. It's a travesty, and for a small club, imagine if you have a small club, junior A or junior B, and you've got this fellow who's playing Tony Forrestal under 14, and by the age of 16, he's not playing with the club no more. And you're going, this fella's going to be our next star player, and he's not playing. And maybe he wouldn't be playing anyway, but I don't think being part of Cork's structure and being elite and being put up on a pedestal was something to help a lot of lads. So that's why we got rid of it, essentially. But the other thing was the football. The football we brought 4 teams down to Waterford for football, and Kerry brought 2 teams down to beat shit out of us. So we said, forget about this as well. Because we do think that, if Kerry's 8 teams would be a match for Cork's 8 teams, wouldn't it be great if Kerry had 200 players as opposed to 50 brilliant fellas? And I suppose, look, I'm not going to tell Kerry how to do their development squads, because, look, obviously it works for them in the football. But I'm looking at the hurling then. If you're a hurling development squad in Kerry, isn't one or your 2 teams in Kerry, wouldn't they be a better match playing against 8 teams in Cork, as opposed to your best team in Kerry playing against Cork's second best team? And Jesus, in the Sonny Walsh, we beat them a couple of years. I remember one year they missed a free in the last puck of the game to knock us out in the Sonny Walsh, and we went on and we won it in a canter afterwards. But it would have meant so much more to Kerry hurling if they'd put that ball over the bar and won the All-Ireland at under 14. And we take it for granted. It's our B team, and we take it for granted. And it's just the whole thing of just All-Ireland champions at 14 is just, I just don't buy it. I just don't think there's value to it.
No under 14 team that's won a Tony Forrestal has won minor 4 years later in the history of Tony Forrestal, is it?
No, and I'll just go into football. To Tipperary, we brought 4 teams down to Waterford football tournament a couple of years ago. Kerry brought 2 teams down. And look, you know what? We actually weren't too bad. But Tipperary actually won the tournament, right? Tipperary had 1 team down there. But that Tipperary team played in 2020. That was their minor team in 2020. I think they got absolutely hammered by Clare. After winning the Munster under 14 football title, beat Kerry in a final. I think they beat South Kerry in a final. They came out of a group with a Cork team in it. 4 years later, or 3 years later, at minor level, they got absolutely annihilated. And I'm kind of going, no, did an awful lot of Tulle players, all right, granted, but like, it's just, I don't know, I just don't see the value of telling fellas they're the best in the county at that age. Like, I just don't like it.
Even at club level, I think thankfully it is moving on a bit. In some areas it's not. But that winning under 14 will translate to senior success later at club level. It's not the case. I do see it in some areas, like when we would have won, because we're like a really small parish, so we win very little underage. When we do, we tend to get an awful lot of future senior champions from it. I don't think it's because we win. I think it's because if we win something underage, we had 10 boys born 14 years earlier. And that's the big thing. There's just more players in that year to go on and progress to senior. Whereas the other clubs who've like dominated underage and never bring it through to senior, because I think like getting a tougher time at underage probably makes you a better player than winning something. And what makes a good under 14 player, a good under 14 team, is often size or a little bit of like, you know, physical talent as opposed to the hurling talent. Whereas having to like fight for developing that bit of talent at 14 when you might be a little bit smaller, and you put the onus on development, even on yourself as a player, will probably translate to a better minor and long term a better senior. And by like you as coaches and as a county board putting that kind of focus on development and say we wanted to bring all of you forward to be future Cork senior stars as opposed to let's be under 14 champions, I think in like long term, like you're I assume you're getting criticism, but long term it surely has to be a benefit.
Look, there was people giving out about it, but sure, like, to be honest, I don't care what people say about it. It's easy for people who want to win a Tony Forest, and here I was, believe me, I was on the sideline at those finals and I'd be gone demented. But like, it's easy for me to judge, but like people who are looking for that kind of instant gratification, and you mentioned it as well about clubs. A lot of clubs that win those failures and stuff underage, and like I don't know if your experience will be the same, lads, but and the same clubs that are probably winning a lot of minor titles and stuff like that, and don't transfer to adult level. A lot of the time, there's a huge disconnect between the coaches of that group and the rest of the club. And what I mean by that is that if you're a coach, and it goes back to the Nafina, the Ballyboden, the Crokes, the Coolas thing, like it's just you're in your own little world with your own group. Whereas if you're in your club, as you said, John, if you've only got 10 boys, it's a good year. Sure, you know everybody in the club. There's a community feel about it. Whereas those bigger clubs who are able to just kind of focus on their own thing because, yeah, sure, look, whatever the seniors are doing. And I don't know what your own experience is, Shane and Damien, about that, but like, I think the bigger clubs would definitely suffer that, where there'd be more little islands in the club. It's not that we're all in this together, we all want, and again, look, I'm saying that, but same people will go down and support the team in the 12 county final as they will with the adult county final in the small clubs. But I think, Jesus, I'd say some clubs, sometimes in Dublin especially, I'd say you could be playing a minor final and half the club wouldn't even know about it.
Well, it's a bit, see, we've less numbers in general, but being there, I suppose there would, now that we're talking about it, and I'm thinking about it here, there would be a disconnect to some degree, but I do see it beginning to change just because there are more, I suppose, there are more people getting on, getting their, like you mentioned, your coaching certs and there are a few good people popping up and starting to give back. See, you're starting to see conversations. Well, I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see maybe in my own club and in one or two other clubs I have some friends, and we discussed that there's a conversation now going like, well, how do we bring people through? How do we hold on to people? How do we get people playing football the way we like people to play in our club, so that that it's not just dependent on a new manager comes in to say the senior team, and then the senior team are off in their own little bubble and the rest of the club is kind of more of a nuisance, or just a kind of a distraction. There's more of a conversation now starting to happen, like, what are we doing with the under-16s? What kind of skill set are we looking to develop with them that we want them to carry through, and how they play, how they enjoy the game, their involvement with the club, and how do we carry that through? So it's kind of like it's maybe starting to the actual development of a culture of performance, I guess, or a culture of the club, maybe I guess, is starting to come through a little bit, as opposed to just being there in kind of just being there in conversation but not actually happening. But we've much smaller numbers, so we've even though we're in a big town like Killarney, we're still never going to get anywhere near the numbers that you're going to get in any of the cities. So it's still a much more manageable task, I guess.
Are Crokes a lot bigger than you numbers wise?
At underage, I think it's pretty even from what I gathered. There was a big influx into Legion there over the past few years.
And is there another club in Killarney as well?
There's SPA, or the third club in Killarney then. So yeah, there's they're intermediate. So there's 2 senior teams and an intermediate team that are all pulling.
That's a good point you make there on like getting the under-16s to play the way we want to play. And I think that ties into Colm, the name of your page, coaching the game. And you said you have always put a big emphasis on playing the game, and there's always an element of the game in it. Is there, because there's an awful lot of debate about this recently, I think football has really pushed on, hurling is in its way there. Is it a case that in this bin here we have drills, and in this bin here we have games, and if you go to the one with drills, you're wrong. If you go to the one with games, you're right. Or is there a big grey area in the middle where we can always find something of benefit in between the two?
Yeah, I'd like you use the words that I'm going to use, the grey area. You've got black and white, and black can be whichever one and white can be whichever one, but I think there's a grey area in the middle is what you got to find for your group. So there's no point in saying, here, John, this is what you use for coaching, because the group you have are very different from the group next door and the group below you and the group in the club up the road. So I think there's no set way, but like what I do say to coaches a lot of time is like, look, once they're competent in the skill. So what I mean by that is if a child can jab lift the ball in hurling or hand pass the ball in football, next level. What's the next level? Because we don't want to be doing the same crisscrossing hand pass and drill in 12 years' time, which we do see a lot of the times. We see coaches going through and they're doing the same skill. But then like you talk to someone like Paddy Christie then, and Paddy Christie said, we get the lads 5 yards away from each other, kicking the ball straight at the other person, just to concentrate and catching it. And they're kind of going, well, that sounds like a fucking drill to me, like. And Paddy Christie says, I've done that with every team we've ever done underage and in the club. And, you know, there's benefits to it, because if you can't catch the ball, you're no good. And I just, you know, like you'd hear a lot of stuff like that and you kind of go, yeah, like it's not one way or the other. And it shouldn't be one way or the other. And it is about having the conversation about, you know, what suits the group best. Because I think that's the important thing, I think, is looking at the group you have. Like if you've got a group that can't kick the football, geez, you might just have to go back to the very, very basics and teach them the technique, be that through drills or whatever format. And I think the other thing with what you said as well, John, is there's a misunderstanding on the use of the word games and drills. Like I consider a game anything where there's a bit of pressure. So what I mean by that is if we've got three under 12-year-olds on one side on the end line and 3 under 21, and you're standing in the middle as the coach trying to block their kick, I consider that a game. Whereas some people might just say that's a drill, but I consider that a game because it's advancing the very, very basic concept.
It's bringing it from closed to open. Like there's just a little bit more decision making involved.
Exactly, yeah. And like as I said, I think a lot of people would still see that as a drill bad. But like as I said, once the child has to, as I said, get their head up and make a decision, like as I said, move them on, and it's a game. But as I said, I think once they can master a skill at a basic level, what's the next level?
And if you have a coach who's just getting involved for the first time, and so many fall back on like, okay, the last time I played or the last time I was training, I did this drill. I will use this here now. And okay, there are so many things we can discuss about that. But if a coach is predominantly relying back on the drills they did, how could they look to transition to becoming more open, more games based, more decision making in their players? What are some simple steps to progress them on that path?
I think it's a bit of coach education. There's a bit of like I think one of the best things you can do is ask them questions. You know, like I think if anyone, what we've just discussed, if we say, right, that player can do that exercise perfectly, like the old thing was do it faster and do it quicker and do it harder and run, you know. And I think
add in more balls.
Yeah, you know, and it's those kind of simple things that actually the coach isn't challenging himself at all. I think that's a large part of it as well, as just challenge the coach being willing to reflect and challenge. I think that's the most important part of coach education, is can we actually get coaches to think about what they're doing, that they're not just doing something they picked out of a book. Because look, there's loads of books out there, and Jesus, I've put a load of them out there. You can
I was actually teeing you up there to mention a few of your books if you wanted. I'm going games based.
Yeah, but they are like, it's just there's loads of stuff out there, but if you don't understand why you're doing it or what the purpose is of it, you shouldn't be doing it, And we do see that thing as well where you go down and watch the intercounty team. And I do think this is a common enough thing as well, is that intercounty teams, a lot of the time, they don't do complicated stuff. People are not they're not satisfied when they go watch an intercounty team train. They go, is that all they did? You're kind of going, well, look, that's what they do, yeah. But like, obviously, they're working at a different skill set of what other people are. But a lot of the time, people aren't, they're expecting this mad drill that's going to crisscrossing and there's going balls going up and down and in and out, and it's not like that. But I think any good coach will bring it back to the game. What is the skill? Like, as I said, look, I play games in primary school. I've never done a drill with primary school, and I only mainly do junior and senior infants. We play games, and if we're doing hurling, we'll play Rob the Nest or Flush or No Man's Land, where they're striking the ball, but there's a purpose to what they're doing. They're making a decision on what they're hitting, where they're hitting it. And the same when we're playing Rob the Nest, they're dribbling the ball, but there's somebody coming against them, or they're trying to get the ball off somebody in the area, and it's a game. And they're able to go from the very, very most basic level of playing a game to learn how to kick the ball and strike a ball. And I'm kind of going, when I see coaches going back to the old stuff, it's just, look, as I said, it's a flaw in the coach education. We're not challenging that person, like.
And speaking a bit of old stuff there, something that kind of, I suppose around 10, maybe 12 years ago, they sprung up around the country was hurling walls. And your first kind of, I suppose, thought would be they're very much lended towards drills or lines or whatever like that. And I know you brought out a book on it, feel free to plug it here now, but what are some of the most effective ways, like, or is the pucking at the wall, is it still beneficial? Can we develop it onto some bit more of a game-based scenario? Or again, is it a case of using both and living in that grey area in the middle?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it's got a bit of let's say discussion lately. But like, there's benefits to the hurling wall, and what I mean by that is that there's benefits and there's overuse sometimes. What I mean by overuse is if there's a hurling wall there in the middle of summer and you've got young fellas standing in the line waiting to hit the ball against the wall when they could be out the pitch doing something a lot more beneficial, then you're not doing a good thing. But if you're Tom Hanks and you get your plane crashes and you end up on an island where there's a wall, a hurley and a ball, like, don't tell me pucking the ball off the wall for 2 years isn't going to make you a better hurler than you would be if you weren't pucking the ball off the wall for 2 years when you came back. But I'm not saying, what I mean by that is, like, it's not the go-to, but if Colm Crowley or if Tony Kelly is working in Clare and he's working out in some village somewhere and he's inside, and at lunchtime he says, do you know what, I'm going to go out and puck the ball against the wall for 15 minutes. It's not making him a worse player. And just people will say that, oh yeah, but that skill doesn't transfer over. Yeah, but like, there's still other parts of it that do transfer over. And a lot of it as well is the mental side of it. I think that's the most important part of pucking the ball against the wall, is the mental side of it. Actually being able to just relax. And there was, I don't know, it was a Torpy Hurley's brought out and taken over as mindfulness for hurling, just pucking the ball against the wall. And it was just an article that they put out. I could be wrong now, it was one of the hurley makers. But it was just about that, about just actually going out, standing 10 or 15 metres from the wall and pucking the ball against the wall or kicking the ball against the wall. There's a calmness to a person to just do that. And that's going back to the very, very basic. But look, as I said, I think what a lot of people do is they focus on the wall when, like, most walls that I see now have an AstroTurf beside it. Some sort of they've got an AstroTurf surface or something. And I'd say use the area as opposed to using the wall. Like, one of the things that I like to do now and belong to school in Bandon with Hammy's, when we're stuck in the ball wall for a while, is we could have 40 them inside there. And it's a nice enough size ball wall, let's say, with an AstroTurf. Let's say it's probably about 5 goals, so it's probably about 35 yards long. But we play this game where you must get 3 passes, but then you're shooting the ball, striking against one of the goals. And whenever the ball rebounds out, you just play on and restart the game, So we're using the wall, and we're getting a purpose out of it. So if we didn't have the wall, we just have to do passes, because we've nowhere to hit the ball to. But we're getting an end product out of our activity from that, So it's a highly competitive activity of 13, 14-year-olds are doing. But there's great value to having the wall there at the end, that you're actually playing a game and there's an end product. Because I think that's one of the things with games a lot of people do as well, is to just play game and game and game. What's the end product of the game? The end product of the game is try to get scores, outscore the opposition. And I think if we can put what a lot of coaches, they don't do, is they'd have this lovely, they might get a quarter of the pitch in front of the goals and they don't use the goals for a whole hour. They're going like, lads, what do you want them to do? You want them to kick the ball over the bar, put the ball over the bar into the back of the net. Use the goals as the end product of the game. So if you're doing a possession game, 3-on-3 in a small square, 5 metres by 5 metres or 10 metres by 10. And after 3 passes, put the ball over the bar. Don't just keep going for 2 minutes and we're just trying to fly each other. Then throw in another ball. Yeah, we can still fly them, but we can get an end product of what they're doing. So I think it's the same with the wall. Is don't use the wall as the focus. Use the area as the focus, but use the wall as an accompaniment.
I think some videos that came out maybe, they're probably about 10 years old now, around like some of the older expert coaches having the 45-minute long wall ball sessions where you're just pucking, coming away with sore hands. They probably drove people a little bit too much in one direction. What you mentioned there, I think, can be an excellent way of using the game skill game model or the play teach play model. You play some game, you may have noticed a little deficiency in your players that may require a bit of isolated practice that you can do against the wall, then bring that back into a game as well, and it's a nice way of blending them both together. Just because we're very conscious of your time now, Colm, coaches going back in about a week's time, underage players back out again, what would be your number 1, number 2, number 3 perhaps top tips to focus on when you get back out on the field there quite soon? And you can feel free then to plug your own podcasts and stuff all like that afterwards.
No, look, as I said, I think it's very simple. I think games. And what I mean by that is that I still play junior hurling poorly, and I still play junior C football and junior C hurling this year, hopefully. But I don't really go down training too often if there's training called, but I'll be there for the match. And I think it's very important as well that with the last year and a half we've had for young fellas, they've missed it. Like, we've got under 8s now who've never played a match, or under 9s who've never played a match, where they've never actually put on their club jersey in a meaningful game. And when I say meaningful game, against an opposition, I don't mean championship or anything like that. But I think it's just important that kids actually come down and enjoy themselves, because like, you'd see 1 or 2 things popped up there now last week on when things were back about teams doing fitness tests and, this kind of stuff. And you go, Christ, it's the last thing you want to do with them. Are they sure what are they fitness testing them for? They've probably done, most of them have done nothing, unless you're senior elite club team or whatever, or ambitions win the county, you're probably tipping away. But like, use the time to play as many games as possible. And when I say games, I'm saying hurling, football, whatever, but play other games. Like, one of the things we did last year, we got the spike ball net. So we actually got that, and we brought it down, and we just picked names out of the hat. So players were in pairs, and we played a doubles game every night. So myself and John against Damien and Shane, 3 touches on your side and off the spike ball net. But Jesus, lads were coming down half an hour early for training to play in it. And we used to just play one game a night before training. So 7:20, whatever the 2 teams were on, they'd play each other. And other lads were coming down just to play it, because it was just something different and it was a bit more lighthearted and stuff like that. But like, I'm not saying everyone go away and play spike ball now. But there will be a hurling championship of spike ball in 2 years' time, so you can start practicing. But I think it's important for kids that they're coming down and they're playing lots of matches, lots of small-sided games. They're not doing any fucking drills where they're lining up waiting for somebody else. Get them out, get them kicking the football, get them striking the ball. And like, look, games could mean anything to different people, but all the kids want to do is play a match. And I think if coaches don't overvalue your own coaching, is what I'd say. A lot of the times coaches think that, training, I get it sometimes, sure, if we've got 9 matches, the next 9 weekends, when are we going to train? We've only 1 night a week to train. I'm going, yeah, that's loads. And lads, young fellas don't want to be fucking training 3 times a week for 1 match. And we've actually a poll on Coaching the Game at the moment to see what do people think is the correct ratio. And 2:1 for on GAAme under 7 to under 9 is leading the charge at the moment. 2 training sessions, one game. I'm going, Jesus, if kids had their way, they'd play fucking 40 games in 1 training session. So cater for the stakeholders. And don't mind what you think and what people tell you is best. Do what the kids want. If you ask the kids when they come down the pitch, what do you want to do? They will say, play a match. Are we playing a match tonight? When are we playing the match? Just play the match and appease them. And so there'll come a time where they understand that, yeah, we need to improve our skills and we'll do an exercise then or an activity or a drill or whatever. But leave them play the matches, because that's all they want. That's all I want anyway. Junior C level.
What's the enjoyment? It's such an important part of the of whatever. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. Like, if anything feels like a chore or that's just not fun, especially for children, you're going to lose them. They're going to look elsewhere for other sporting options too, and you risk losing them, I guess.
And feel free to plug your own podcast or website and your coaching books and like that then.
Yeah, look, the coaching the game is at GAAme Coaching on Twitter. Anyone can follow it and find it, and you might find something useful. I'm kind of, as I said, the last year and a bit now, I haven't been sharing much content myself, but I'm sharing what other people are doing. So I said if there's something good out there, I'll try to share it for coaches to see. And the Roy Orbison Tattoo podcast is, I suppose, look, do you know what, it was, we set it up because I'm in Cork, the two boys are in Dublin, and just a good way to stay in touch with each other. But we watch a sports film, we get on some good coach, or well, some reputable coach comes on with us, has a chat about the coaching in a film. So we've varied list of people. As I said, you can check it out. It's on Twitter and Instagram. And as I said, there's some very good content in there. And as I said, if you like films, like sports films, listen out for the one that you might like and see what way we look at it. As I said, I find it very interesting just from the perspective of actually watching sports films, not for the film as much anymore, but more for the coaching. And it's actually interesting from that perspective. So we might do a crossover there someday, boys. You can pick a film and we'll have you all on for it. But it's I do you know what, it's a bit of crack, and as I said, probably the same as you says. It's a great way to be in touch with people that you're good friends with, and as learning a little bit as well, and telling herself that we need to watch this film now Saturday night instead of watching the Kardashians or buying Hollywood or whatever the latest nonsense is. So it's all good.
You can pencil us in for Space Jam 2.
Space Jam 2.
Come release day.
Yeah, we can get a trip to the cinema out of it even. Just set up recorders at the back of the cinema.
Good old piracy.
Yeah, we've a plan that someday we'd like to think that we'd either get a cinema like that or go into the Lighthouse Cinema in Dublin or something like that and put on some film, and 4 people sit up at the top then and we'll go through the coaching in the film, and because I did serve a few pints there as well. But as I said, that's where we think it would be good crack sometime. As I said, even in a pub, trying to film. But Jesus, I can imagine now after 2 hours fellas watching the film, there'll be no listening to us.
There'll be some serious analysis, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they'll be all saying we're brilliant. So it'd be interesting. But I do think it's actually, that's something we would love to do, is just, Jesus, as I said, like the 2 lads now, we're good friends. We'd love, just love to just go for a pint and have a chat about something, and as I said, that's something we'd like to do with people, because look, it's important to meet up and spend time with each other, because it's completely undervalued in life. And the older you get, like I just said the twins last weekend, one of the other lads has a second child on the way in a couple of months' time. One of the other fella had his 4th child 2 weeks ago. Time gets short and your friends get shorter, so it's important just to stay in touch a bit,
Colm, absolutely brilliant with your time, and I'm sure you've a busy house to get back to there as well, so thanks a million for that, and we'll see you all again next week.